All right, so what we're going to talk about today is how do we get bigger quads and how can we do this through dorsiflexion or having knee over toe. So dorsiflexion is the mechanism that is going to help you build a great set of quads, but only if done correctly. So let's dive into it. So what dorsiflexion actually is. So dorsiflexion is simply your shins traveling forward over your foot while your heel stays planted down. It's essentially the ankle bend that lets your knee push past your toes. So if we look at this here, a restricted dorsiflexion angle is going to be right around that 10 to 15%. You can see that there's very little, mobility work done here. If you think of this as the leg and the foot placement here, and if we look at somebody that has a full range of dorsiflexion, this is about 30 to 40% to where the knee joint is directly over the end of the toe, right? So if we look here, the the heel is going to lift up pretty early here if we were to push past this 15% to whereas here the heel is fully planted and we're over this knee over toe at a pretty good range here at 40%. So most lifters have far less ankle mobility than what they actually realize. And things such as, or as simple as like having tight calves, or even having older injuries, excuse me, such as like old ankle sprains, can be pretty common to limit that ability of just good ankle mobility. So you always have to keep in mind though, is you cannot push a knee forward to get more dorsiflexion if the ankle won't allow it. If you do, and you do this under load, you're probably going to, number one, injure yourself, or the best case scenario is the heel is just going to come up and you're not going to put anything into quad. But biggest thing though is if your ankle just can't bend forward, your quad growth is just going to be limited. And we're going to dive into why that is. So more knee travel is going to create more quad tension. So when your knee is allowed to travel forward over the toe, the quad has to work harder to control and then reverse that movement back. So if you stop the knee short, which is if you think about if you're looking at your foot at like a bird's eye view here, right? If this is your foot and then this pink graphic here is your kneecap, like getting over your toe, right? This is where it's going to stop short. And this is where if you can fully get, that 40-degree, ankle flexion, right? To where that knee is fully then covering the toe. That's what you want, right? That's going to give you the biggest quad tension at that point in time when the knee is fully over the toe. So that forward knee travel is going to lengthen the quad. And if you're doing it under load, this is the exact stimulus that's going to, drive and push you to have more quad growth. And it lets you actually reach rear delt without your lower back coming into the equation or your hips rounding over as well too to kind of help compensate for that. So um, while you're doing these knee over toe movements as well too, it's always a great thing to kind of keep plugged into the back of your mind that the less forward lean that you can have with certain movements is going to mean less hip and lower back coming into the equation and drive more stimulus into the quad in itself. And we'll get into that specifically with split Bulgarians here in a second. So if we look at what limited mobility as far as like that ankle flexion to, then produce less output from a dorsiflexion standpoint, what does it actually do? So your body's going to find a workaround when your mobility is just flat out limited. So a stiff ankle does not stop the squat pattern from happening. It just moves or it shifts the problem to another part of the body. Um, More so away from the quad, which is where that we want it, right? So if we look at somebody that has very poor, ankle mobility, dorsiflexion is very limited, the first thing that you'll typically see is the heel starts to come off the floor. Then they're going to lean over with their torso. Their hips are going to start to come back, and then at that point, you're then pulling into the hamstrings and the glutes as well too, and we're taking the tension off the quad itself. So you have to keep in mind though, if you see somebody that is doing this, nine times out of 10, they're not doing it on purpose or just out of lack of knowledge. It's just a downstream effect of having poor ankle mobility, fast forward. moving forward, kind of down the chain of events, that poor ankle mobility leads to poor dorsiflexion, which then is going to, cause their body to overcompensate, essentially just to keep the body from getting injured, right? So if you notice that your heels are coming off of the floor, your butt immediately starts to push back. You're leaning over the weight. You probably need to look and see what your ankle mobility is like at that standpoint. So what you can do is a couple of things here. You should definitely test to make sure that your range of motion is where it needs to be before that you actually get underneath a load and hurt yourself, right? So the best way to do this is the wall test. So what you want to do is stand in front of a wall, get the tips of your toes about 5 to 6 inches from the actual wall in itself. Like think about if you're doing like a split stance Bulgarian to where like one leg is in front of the other, right? So you'll have that front leg, those toes about 5 to 6 inches from the wall, and then you essentially just push your knee forward to see if you can keep your heel planted on the ground the entire time while also, pushing that knee forward and try to touch the wall. So, now granted, this is something that people with great ankle mobility can do fairly easily. But if you have pretty poor ankle mobility, like that 10 to 15% range, you're not going to be able to do this at all, especially right away. You'll have to work your way up to this. Another one is going to be something that you could do today, every day, which is something that I do. So calf and ankle stretches, 30 to 60 seconds done daily. I do this on my walks a lot because I do get tight calves quite a bit. So about halfway through my evening walks, I'll stop on a curb, a sidewalk, a step off, a step, whatever, and stretch both calves for 30 to 60 seconds. And then, it loosen the calves up and I'm good to walk again. But just doing these, a tight calf can cause a lot of issues from, issues with the knee, issues with the ankle, the feet. So any chance that you can get to stretch your calves out, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Any kind of heel elevated squat, such as using like a plate underneath your heels, a wedge, that's always a good thing to add in there as well too. Or if you are like me and want to just add in some lifting shoes, and actually wear those, all that does is that actually adds knee travel to the pattern without needing a significant amount of like a mobility to get the job done. And I'm just like wearing the weightlifting shoes because, if I'm doing something like a leg press, to where having a wedge on the actual leg press isn't practical because it's going to slide out or it's going to fall. Wearing the weightlifting shoes just prevents that because it's attached to my foot, right? It's a very easy addition to add in there. And then another one is something that I personally need to start doing is these tibialis raises, sorry, to strengthen the front of that shin throughout that entire range of motion. So one thing that you need to keep in mind though is if you do decide to get some of those heel elevated shoes, that this is a tool to use. It's not going to be a fix. So you should still try to work on that active range of motion to get you to where that you don't need those. Um, but to be honest, they are, I would say, pretty expensive pair of tennis shoes that you're only going to wear a couple of times a week. So like, obviously, if you're going to invest in some, get you a good pair and just know that you're probably going to be using them for a while. But that shouldn't stop you from trying to better that, dorsiflexion angle, just as like a progressive manner that you should, just try to be working on each and every week as well too. So now, great example here of this a little fellow right here, and we'll talk about this here in a minute. But once you get all that stuff done, you want to put the range to work and see where you're actually at. So if we look at things like a squat, right? If you're looking at like a bird's eye view of a squat, you want to make sure that your first initial cue is knees out. That's just going to help your knees track over the toes, and once you get into the bottom of that movement, your knees should be fully over the toe. And if it's not, it may not suggest that you have poor ankle mobility. Your setup could also be wrong as well too. A lot of people don't think about, the initial setup of a squat is very important, right? If you think about in the very bottom of that squat, wherever that bar is sitting on your back, that path needs to be over your midfoot. And if you're too far forward or you're too far back, then the dorsiflexion angle of that particular lift, I'm not gonna say it doesn't matter, but it's incorrect because the setup from the get-go was incorrect. So just make sure if you're doing a movement like that, that your setup is correct as well too. And that can also apply to this right here too. So if you'll notice, I aligned this, I don't know what you would call this thing, this little adjustable pad that you can, put your foot on essentially. I angled this, or I had this set up to where the very back of my heel should always be on this line here, right? Now, this is just for me to have a very easy and simple setup as I get through those tougher working sets. I don't have to think as much as, okay, where should my foot go? Am I too far forward? Am I too far back? I just know that, hey, the back of my heel should be planted on this line here. And that's just more like a visual cue to me. And if we go back to the, squat variation, when I did squats yesterday, once I went, my warm up routine with things like squats, the first thing that I do, is I do a body weight squat. And then once I know that my toes and feet are where they need to be, I will get like a box or like a Pilates step up box or a 5 pound plate, something. And I'll put that at the end of my toes, to know on my next set, I don't have to think about where my feet is going. I just have to put them in front of that box, that I just put there. Again, it just takes another element of thinking out of the equation there. So if we get back to the knee over toe stuff here, so like if we're doing, split squats, the biggest thing that you want to look at here is, so, obviously I have pants on here, so it's kind of hard to tell, but the knee is here, stacked over the ankle at the starting point, and at the end of the toe here is right, or the end of the kneecap is right over the end of the toe here. So that's pretty good dorsiflexion. I might could have gotten a few more degrees out of this if I would have pushed it a little further. It honestly I probably could have cropped the video a little better to show that it was a little more dorsiflexion, but you get the point. The knee essentially started here, and at the travel of the movement, it ended up here. So just making sure that you get the full knee over toe is going to ensure the most quad out of these exercises. And then if you're looking at something like a leg press, trying to get your feet as low on the platform as you comfortably can without your heels pulling up and without your pelvis rolling under is going to be your best bet for that dorsiflexion as well too. So the main thing is, though, is make sure that before that you start adding a load, anything as far as like something that could potentially hurt you, make sure that your setup is correct and that your angle of attack is going to be in a good place as well too. Because like also doing any kind of setups like this, always need to make sure that your feet are aligned properly. They're not way too far out like pigeon toed, or they're not cambered in. There's a lot of things that can go to it, but the main thing is just make sure that before you put a load into the movement that you're doing, that your setup is right, and that your ankle mobility will actually be able to handle the load that you're about to place upon it, and not have your heels pull up, or worst case scenario, you tear something, right? So at the end of the day, the biggest takeaway from this is that your ankles and your ankle mobility decide how big that your quads can actually get. Now, granted, we know that you can do like leg extensions and things like that, but at the end of the day, if it was me and I only had like one exercise to do to build a great set of quads, it would not be a leg extension. It would be something like a split a Bulgarian, because I know that I can get full knee over toe in that movement and get the most quad tension out of that movement, and I can progress with that for a very, very long time. So, if anybody has any questions with any of that, anything to add, um, what you guys got?
I'll say for me, I just have to I'm glad that you mentioned like the doing like the squat press or anything like that, like where it's like a plate
Yep.
that you're kind of like pressing. A lot of times I have to remind myself to put my feet like more down because I have a tendency to push them either middle or more up. I'd say most of the time I stick with the middle. But I definitely have to like tell myself to like move my feet down just because for whatever reason that's not where my natural mindset goes.
Yeah, and I think most people like to put it there because it's easier, right? And you can
Yeah.
You can put more plates on it because you know you're going to get more hamstring and more glute involvement out of that as well too. But I would say the biggest thing for me that has helped my legs grow in the past year, honestly, I would say is just dropping the ego and, hey, know that I want to stimulate the quad. I don't care nothing about how much weight that I can move from point A to point B. At the end of the day, is the quad actually working, or am I pulling a lot of that movement into the glute, into the hamstring? Like I want to, like, now granted, if you're doing a split squat, a split squat with Bulgarian, you're going to pull some glute and a little hamstring as well too. But
Yeah.
majority of those reps should be purely focused into the quad. Um, so just lowering the weight and not being too concerned about what homeboy over here is doing because his legs probably don't look as good as yours does, and he's using 5 times the amount of weight. So just always have to keep that ego in check as well too.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything to add to that at all? I will say I've learned to love the split Bulgarians, as you guys have seen in that video or that picture earlier. Um, I used to hate them because number one, they sucked, they were hard, but I'm trying to lean into making myself do hard things and things that I suck at, so I can improve and be a better bodybuilder. So my most hated exercise of all time has now turned into not my favorite of all time, but it's definitely in the top five, I would say now. So
Would you say that you do like a good bit of squats now too, like plate loaded squat, like back squats and stuff, or no?
yeah,
I know you
so
mentioned it.
I just added those in about 2 weeks ago. Just because like if you look at people doing a hack squat, like I used to love doing hack squats, but the more and more that I've watched training videos and like of myself and then other people, and the more that I've learned about kind of the mechanisms of how that hack squat can actually generate the or put a lot of pressure inside of the quad and then also on the knee joint. If you look at somebody doing a hack squat, 9 times out of 10, if you watch, they are getting good, dorsiflexion initially. That knee starts to track, over the toe, but then once they get into the bottom of the movement, their pelvis turns under, and then their knee,
Mm,
instead of it going forward, it then starts to go backward, and then you have to push and get out of the bottom, right? So
mm,
you're getting good knee flexion essentially, and then your pelvis rolls, and then your knee goes back, and then you have to kind of backtrack and get all that stuff back up. So I say that to say I used to do a lot of hack squat, but after watching back a lot of my videos, I noticed that I was doing that, and so another great exercise to get a lot of knee over toe is just squats. And I've been doing a lot of Smith machine squats just because that
mm,
path is fixed, right? Like I just need to, have my feet fixed, and then have my and then the bar path is already fixed as well too. So essentially, when I start the Smith machine squat, my first thought is knee over toe, and I just push my knees out, and then everything else just kind of falls into place. So that is
yeah,
something that I'm doing now too. But I think it's just more or less out of an injury standpoint as well too, just trying to limit that as much as I possibly can. So
got you.
anybody else have anything at all to add? All right. So on the next leg day, I assume that all five of you are going to send me videos now. So I want to see some great dorsiflexion, some great ankle mobility, and some quads being grown. So as long as that's the case, I'll let you guys go. But hope you guys have a good day, and I appreciate you guys showing up. I will talk to you guys soon.